welcome to the real history of North America, a continent that has always been less of a united nation and more of a patchwork quilt of competing civilizations. If you follow the news today, you often hear the idea that Americans have become divided because they have strayed from their core principles, and that unity can only be restored by returning to shared founding values. But what if the struggle for national cohesion has been present since the beginning? This is the central argument of Colin Woodard's book, American Nations, A History of the 11 Rival Regional Cultures of North America. Woodard proposes that North America is not one country, but a collection of 11 distinct regional cultures. These nations correspond to few national, state, or provincial boundaries. Instead, their cultural boundaries were forged by the specific ideas and groups that first settled them, influencing everything from values and attitudes to political preferences. This pattern persists today as Americans relocate, sorting themselves into like-minded communities and nations. The book reveals the history of these nations, from the moment of their foundations to their present positions, within the continent's three federations: Canada, Mexico, and the United States. So, who are these 11 nations? They are El Norte, New France, Tidewater, Yankeedom, New Netherland, the Deep South, the Midlands, Greater Appalachia, the Left Coast, the Far West, and First Nation. The foundational conflicts. The two original English beachheads established ideologies that were diametrically opposed, setting the stage for centuries of conflict. On one side, we find Tidewater, founded primarily by the younger sons of Southern English gentry, who aimed to reproduce the conservative, semi-feudal, aristocratic society of the English countryside. Tidewater elites valued classical republicanism, embracing libertas, a concept of liberty reserved for the elite, requiring a vast subservient class. They saw themselves as descendants of the aristocratic Norman conquerors, not the common Anglo-Saxons. The original Jamestown colony, founded by private investors, was conceived as a corporate-owned military base, and early settlers would rather starve than work. The gentry enjoyed leisure and independence, while those at the bottom of the hierarchy had progressively fewer liberties. In stark opposition was Yankeedom, founded by radical Calvinists, Puritans, and Pilgrims, mostly middle-class and often well-educated. They intended to build an applied religious utopia, a new Zion, a city on a hill to serve as a model for the world. Yankeedom championed the Germanic concept of Freiheit, or freedom. As a birthright, they believed that communal, self-government was necessary to defend the public good. This led them to conceive of government as being run by and for themselves, establishing mandatory public schools immediately because everyone was expected to be literate to encounter divine revelation by reading scripture. Critically, Yankees had a profound missionary desire to impose their moral, Calvinist ways on everyone else. The complex colonial tapestry. The next waves of settlement introduced diverse, contrasting cultures. The Deep South was founded by colonists coming primarily from Barbados, which contemporary accounts described as the richest and most horrifying society in the English-speaking world. They imported a brutal slave system built on the gang labor method and a racial caste hierarchy. Their 1698 law declared Africans to have barbarous, wild, savage natures, requiring tight control and draconian punishments. The Deep South became a near-carbon copy of the West Indian slave state. New Netherland, centered around what is now New York City, was established by the Dutch West India Company as an unabashedly commercial settlement, influenced by the intellectual tolerance of the Netherlands. It placed a high value on freedom of inquiry and profound tolerance of diversity. Visitors were shocked by the settlement's ethnic and linguistic mix. Father Isaac Jogues counted 18 languages, spoken among just 500 inhabitants in 1643, noting the arrogance of Babel. Few people wished to leave the tolerant Netherlands, resulting in a shortage of colonists. These commercial ideals, including an unflinching commitment to the freedom of inquiry and profound tolerance, were forced on the other nations at the Constitutional Convention and passed down as the Bill of Rights. New France aimed for a deeply collaborative and tolerant model. Leaders like Samuel de Champlain sought respectful alliance and cross-cultural marriage with Native American nations, choosing coexistence over conquest or enslavement. This openness led to many Frenchmen, known as coureurs de bois, abandoning feudalism to live the semi-nomadic, free life of the indigenous peoples. The Midlands was William Penn's holy experiment in Pennsylvania, designed as a country where different creeds and ethnic backgrounds could live in harmony. It attracted diverse, German-speaking immigrants like Mennonites and Lutherans and Quakers, who championed widespread political liberty, limited government, and religious tolerance. It was the only part of British North America to have a non-British majority in 1775. Layered across this diversity is Greater Appalachia, formed by fiercely independent Scots-Irish and border region refugees who rushed to the isolated frontier to live beyond the reach of the law. They were a clan-based warrior culture characterized by deep anti-authoritarianism, suspicion of political authority, and anti-elite sentiment. They stored their wealth in mobile forms like livestock and distilled whiskey, the latter serving as their form of cash. Revolts and expansion. When the American Revolution came, it was not a unified war for a single republic. It involved 6 distinct conflicts, fought for varied reasons that did not correspond to colonial borders. Tidewater joined largely because imperial policies threatened the privileges and liberties of its aristocratic class. The Deep South was driven to independence primarily by the fear that the British might arm their slaves and destroy the slave system. Yankeedom fought in defense of local control by elected representatives, and the primacy of their covenanted communities. The Midlands were deeply ambivalent, with pacifist Quakers and Germans striving to stay out of the conflict altogether. The divisions persisted after independence, when Alexander Hamilton's financial policies, which favored coastal speculators and imposed a sharp excise tax on whiskey, the Appalachian currency, sparked the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794. It was Appalachia, rising up against what they saw as federal elite machinations. Meanwhile, Yankeedom, fearing the growth of the Deep South, convened the Hartford Convention during the War of 1812, to discuss secession and a potential alliance with Britain. The clash known as the Civil War was a continuation of this War of Nations. The Deep South seceded explicitly to defend and celebrate slavery, which they saw as the foundation of every well-designed and durable republic, modeled on the slave-holding republics of ancient Greece and Rome. Yankeedom became the engine of the Union cause, driven by a moral mission against the moral affront of slavery. In the West, 3 more nations emerged. El Norte was the first European culture on the continent, arriving from Spain with a mission of converting indigenous inhabitants to Catholicism. Society was highly stratified, using Native Americans as unpaid neophytes for forced labor on missions, a system noted for its harsh resemblance to a slave colony. This Spanish heritage gave rise to the open range cattle industry and the legendary cowboy culture of the American West. The Far West developed in the sparsely populated, arid mountain regions, due to the harsh environment and massive capital required for large-scale mining and irrigation. The region quickly fell under the control of railroads and corporate cartels. This history instilled a deep, lasting distrust of powerful authorities, often resulting in a political culture that wants the government to get out, leave us alone, and give us more money. The left coast, running down the Pacific coast, was influenced by a Yankee missionary effort, intent on saving California from hedonistic gold rush barbarians. It retained New England idealism, combined with a commitment to individual self-exploration and discovery. It became the birthplace of global movements like environmentalism, the peace movement, and the gay rights movement, often alongside New Netherland. The modern struggle. In the post-Reconstruction era, a powerful cultural coalition known as the Dixie Bloc emerged, merging the aristocratic Tidewater and Deep South, with parts of Greater Appalachia through a civil religion known as the Lost Cause. This alliance, centered on conservative Christian fundamentalism and white supremacy, maintains power through policies that prioritize low taxes and discourage unions, often through fear-mongering about Yankees taking away Bibles and guns. Today, the political map reflects the clash between the blue nations Yankee, Midlands, left coast, New Netherland. They champion communal responsibility, effective governance, and social reform. Red nations the Dixie Bloc and the Far West. They prioritize individual freedom, hostility to federal regulation, and low taxation. The United States needs its central government to function cleanly, openly, and efficiently because it's one of the few things binding us together. However, the continued competition between these 11 nations makes coherent governance difficult. Thanks for joining us today. See you in the next video.